To Chicago now, where at least 38 people were shot over Memorial Day weekend. 7 of those victims have died.
38 people. The city typically sees a spike in gun violence over the holiday weekend. This comes despite police and community efforts to combat shootings. So for more on this, we want to bring in Mike Puccinelli. He's a reporter with our Chicago station, WBBM. Thanks so much for joining us, Mike. I mean, that number. And I know we expect sort of a spike in violence when there's a long weekend. It's the unofficial start of summer. We see this in a lot of cities that are struggling with violence. But in the 30s, that's got to be sort of a dismal record breaker.
Well, it is pretty dismal, but believe it or not, Anne-Marie, it's actually an improvement. We're looking at numbers in 2016 of about 70 total shootings. And then in 2015, there were actually 12 fatalities during that same Memorial Day weekend. So believe it or not, this is actually an improvement, and they hope to build on the quote-unquote progress that's been made.
So what is the reason? I think a lot of people are going to look at this, Mike, and wonder, why has violence gripped Chicago over Memorial Day weekend for years? Is it because you get a lot of people that are congregating at outings, concerts, family barbecues? I mean, it's so hard for people to understand why the violence spikes at this particular time of the year.
I think a lot of it is what you alluded to. I mean, in Chicago, we've really had for many years, we don't have a great spring. We're often waiting all spring for spring, and then it seems to arrive typically on this weekend. And of course, it's the holiday. People are congregating outside, and there's gang rivalries, and that tends to come to a head, especially on the south and west sides of the city. When people are congregating outside, we had one particular one on the near west side where there was a shooting at around 1:30 in the morning, and then about 4 or 5 hours after that, they went back, and there was another shooting at the very same place, the very same block, possibly a retaliatory shooting. So it's a cycle of violence that is very hard for law enforcers to get their head around.
So, you know, the violence in Chicago is something that's become somewhat of a national conversation for a while now, and you point out that the numbers are actually down, but for a lot of people across the country, they're going to hear 38 people shot, and that's not going to sound like a great number to them. Mayors have struggled with this. You now have a new mayor, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. What is her plan to address this?
Well, she's a former federal prosecutor. She's definitely going to include the feds quite a bit more. There were some raids that preceded the weekend where they were going after guns and drugs, and they busted more than 30 people during those raids. They were teaming up with the feds for that. She also added more than 1,200 officers on the streets, so they're definitely going to increase the manpower in the area. She has kept the old superintendent in place right now, and at this point, it's unclear as to how long Superintendent Eddie Johnson will remain in the post, but it seems like they're going to work together and see how things work. But right now, she's sticking with Eddie Johnson. One of the things he's focused on is emphasizing technology, strategic decision support centers, which they say have helped reduce violence in these violence-plagued areas by some 20% every time there's one of these technology-laden centers put into place. They include ShotSpotter and predictive analytics that help them get to places before the crime actually happens. That's something that's done in conjunction with the University of Chicago.
All right, Mike Puccinelli with our station WBBM in Chicago. Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.